Hi everyone, this is Phil Travis and AMH 1020 here at State College of Florida. This week we are going to be looking at and examining the progressive era. Um, and our reading, of course, for this week is found in modules, and you can find the progressive era reading right there in our weekly modules for this week. Um, Contrary to what I may have said previously, our test is not this week, our test is next week. We'll have our first test next week, and then you'll have the first paper due the following week, and we'll talk more about that paper next week. It's not hard, and remember, you only have to write one paper, so you have the option to do the first set paper, the second paper, or the third paper. Though I really discourage you from waiting to do the third paper. Do either the first or the second paper and get it out of the way. Um, so the progressive era this week. Oh, look, a friend of mine joined me. This is Gumby. His pal Pokey's right here. See, Pokey. Uh, there's a funny movie from the '80s actually, where one of the characters carries Gumby in his pocket, and I just, when I was a very little kid, I had reruns of Gumby in the morning, so I have Gumby on my desk here in my office here in the Bradenton campus. But so Gumby's saying, "What's up? How's it going?" That's not the factoid though for this week. Um, so this week's factoid, there's no quiz this week. I just want you again to do the discussion forum. I will put the study guide for the test in this week's modules, and the idea is that I hope everybody starts preparing for the test. So we'll have a test next week, so start doing your preps for that this week. I'll put the study guide up for you in there for this week, and the study guide consists of really a myriad of terms, people, places, these types of things, events, and you should be able to understand the who, what, when, where, and that kind of thing. So be preparing for the test, which will be next week, and then the week following you'll have a paper that hopefully a lot of you will do and get that out of the way. Because if you do the first paper and I, take points off, you could do the second paper and I'll drop the lowest grade. Remember that. So doing the first paper will always, benefit you because you can do the second paper at no potential cost. So you got a couple of big assignments coming up next week and the following week. So this week's down week, just the graded discussion forum. Our topic for this week again is the progressive era. And the progressive era is really a transformative period for um, American society and government and politics, um, because it's the progressive era that really takes the United States from a period during the Industrial Revolution, a period, sorry about that, a period during the Industrial Revolution in which the attitude of leaders, both in the state governments and in the federal government, was largely hands off. It was more centered around a laissez faire economic interpretation, and this allowed for the creation of massive, huge monopolists that had more power than the actual government had. And this came at the detriment of everyday Americans. Some historians have referred to the current time period that we're living in here in the 21st century as almost like a new era of the Gilded Age in which corporate interests have become more significant than those of the people. Some legitimate historians, like Doris Kearns Goodwin, for example, have made this suggestion. Um, so the Gilded Age, though, there was very little. The leadership in the United States did not have the idea that their job was to sort of protect the American people or to do things to improve the lot of the American people, of everyday middle class Americans, but rather the job of the president, the job of the government, was largely understood as being centered around the idea of assuring the smooth operation of business day to day. And this is one of the reasons why the presidents of the Gilded Age are sometimes referred to as the forgettable presidents, because they didn't really do anything. They were just kind of people that oversaw the smooth operation of business and did very little to sort of regulate economy or society in a way that might, be in the benefit of everyday people. And the progressive era is defined as a reaction against that. Because the problem is that what became a real issue in the Gilded Age was environmental problems, including mass deforestation, issues of air pollution, real problems with the condition of workers, particularly in things like mining and manufacturing, real problems with the quality of food that Americans were eating. Health and the ingredients that were going into food was completely unregulated. This was a real issue. There were problems with political corruption. There was a real problem with wealth inequality in the United States and the formation of huge monopolies, which, of course, was very much to the disadvantage of everyday working and middle class Americans. And a lot of Americans feared that this extreme inequality in the country in the late 1800s would result in some kind of, Marxist sort of revolution in the United States. This greatly feared a lot of people in the United States, and that was one of the driving forces behind many of the people that acted in the progressive era to try to create a regulatory system that could, improve not only the quality of life for many Americans, but could also provide certain consumer safety checks on a lot of levels, could protect the environment and so forth in such a way that would improve the quality of life for so many Americans that it would effectively take the, I suppose you'd say, it would take the incentive to launch that kind of a revolution. It would take that incentive off the table for many Americans. And so the progressive era was really a reaction to the laissez-faire, industrialist, monopolist era of the Gilded Age, which created huge wealthy monopolies and created a great deal of inequality and hardship for middling and working class Americans as well as farmers. And so the progressive era was kind of a reaction to that. And in that sense, it created the model for the next 100 years, the model being that the federal government as well as state governments can do certain things to protect the well-being of regular citizens, as well as to do things to improve the quality of life of everyday citizens. Things like various forms of consumer protection programs are all in the model of the progressive era. Things like the minimum wage, that's the model of the long-term influence of the progressive era. Programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, while those programs are not created by the progressives in the early 1900s, they are in that same vein, the same idea of using the government as a way to sort of protect the security and well-being of everyday Americans. And that was the huge change that the progressive era really signifies. The factoid is this. So Teddy Roosevelt, who is one of my favorite presidents, Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican who largely went against the desire of his party. As a progressive, he cut across party lines, and I think in a lot of respects you could say that Teddy Roosevelt really truly did what he believed was in the best interest of the country, as opposed to special interests in these types of things. Teddy Roosevelt made a lot of enemies in his political career, in part because of his desire to kind of do what he believed was best. He could kind of bully people a little bit, but he cut across party lines, and this angered a lot of people in the Republican establishment. But it earned him a legitimate credibility in the history of the United States as a progressive reformer and as a person who really tried to do what he believed was best for the country. And he was a learned person. Teddy Roosevelt, in his prime, used to read a book a day. He was a teetotaler. He drank a lot of coffee, and could be a very in-your-face kind of personality. But he did a lot of great things to sort of establish this idea for the rest of the century that the government could be used in a way to benefit the lives of all American citizens and to improve the security, safety, to protect consumers in the country. So here's the factoid, though. This is a long announcement. I apologize. And here's the factoid. One of Teddy Roosevelt's greatest contributions as a progressive was the preservation of many national landmarks and in wilderness areas. Teddy Roosevelt preserved more national forest acreage than any president before or since. And one of his great contributions was to protect the Grand Canyon. Teddy Roosevelt knew that if you did not put federal protection on the Grand Canyon, that mining companies would go in and they would mine the Grand Canyon, and of course this would destroy the beauty of the Grand Canyon. It would pollute the Colorado River, which runs down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and it would destroy this pristine and incredible natural wonder of the American West. And so one of Teddy Roosevelt's great contributions as a progressive was to preserve for all Americans, hopefully for all time, the Grand Canyon, so that all Americans could go and experience these types of natural wonders. So that's the factoid for this week. I'm sorry, it's a long announcement. I got carried away there. But email me that factoid no later than Wednesday by midnight. Get your extra point added to one of the tests by the end of the term. Help your grade out. And hopefully everybody's enjoying these, and they're kind of interesting. I have a bunch of factoids. It's hard for me to choose the ones that I want to choose all the time. But anyway, without further ado, let's have a great week.